As always, I just want to lead off and say thank you to everyone who's continuing to join us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. I very much appreciate everyone who has stood in the breach and continued to support us. It's the reason we are still here. Without that, there would be no more Florida Maquis. As you've seen so many really, really great channels over the last 5 to 10 years just pack it up and say, you know what? We can't deal with the censors anymore. I've been one of the lucky ones. I've been one of the blessed ones, and I always want to make sure that I let everyone know how much I appreciate them. If you'd like to join us over there, whatever God puts on your heart, there's 4 different levels. Best part is you've got 90 days. And if it's not for you, you can get every dime you pledge back. Whether it's 5 a month, 10 a month, whatever it is. It's all fully and completely refundable. Caveat, within the first 90 days. Now, I'll warn you, over there, we take the gloves off. We don't pull any punches. And there's some, I guess what they call, what is it now? Not safe for work images over there. That's why we have Patreon. We have the paywall. So, anyway, God bless. I hope everyone's having a great late spring, early summer. Over here, though, at the YouTube channel, we've been talking about something lately that's kind of tweaked a lot of people. And they say that I'm being repetitive, some folks, and I might be. But when you really think about it and you sit down and look at everything that's going on in the world, whether it's politics or war, it's a fight between God's law, natural law, and man's law. Or Satan's law, meaning do as thou wilt. That's basically the mantra of all Satanism. Do as thou wilt. Do whatever comes to your mind. Now, some people think about this always in a negative context, but every law that's written by man has been just conjured up of his own make-believe mind as to what he thinks is the right thing to do at that moment in time. In fact, the Bible even has a scripture. I'm sure someone will give me the location of it, and it says, there is a way that seems right unto a man, but the footsteps thereof lead to death and destruction. Paraphrasing there real quick, that God's ways are not man's ways, and man's ways are not God's ways. Now, the reason I think I've tweaked so many people is because I've used this image that's bothered a lot of folks. The young lady on the right is Tracy Lords from way back in the 1980s, when she, of her own volition, at 15 years old, decided to go get herself a fake ID from the state of California that said she was 18. And then she decided, of her own volition, not being pressured by anyone else, to enter the porn industry and made films, and nobody even questioned her. Why? Well, she was, I guess, what they refer to as an early bloomer. And I've made the assertion, and anybody who grew up in Gen X or the boomer era, at that time, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, we were not referred to as children anymore. In fact, by the time you turn about 13, you are told, look, you're a young man, you're a young woman now. You need to begin acting like a young adult woman, young adult man. Now, the guy on the left here was just a physical example of a 15-year-old bodybuilder. That I don't think you look at this person from the neck down, or really anyway, and you make this, and if you make the assertion that you're looking at a child simply because you're brainwashed with the whole number 18 nonsense, which is a recent invention, then I can't help you at that point if you're just going to be stuck on the idea that government gets to determine when someone becomes an adult. And that's what it is. They're the ones who pass the laws and issue the driver's licenses and the birth certificates. Because that's what age is. It's just a distance from a time a birth certificate was issued. That's all it is. When you become that person, that different person that is an adult, that's up to God. And the chart that I used here, natural law, is based on principles and truth. It's inherent to creation, how God intended things to be. It's harmonized with, due to knowledge and understanding. Meaning you can see it out in the natural world. It's universal, exists and applies anywhere in the universe regardless of location, eternal and immutable, exists and applies for as long as the universe exists, and it cannot be changed. Men are men and women are women. And children are children. They're very different things. There's no way of a man that would seem right to any child, regardless of gender. Same thing with a woman. The way a woman would do things wouldn't make any sense to a child, male or female. It's an entirely different thing. But over on the right side, man's laws, dogmatic beliefs, constructs of the mind, they're complied with because people in power put them in place. And they said, look, we'll punish you. We'll put you in jail. We'll put you on a list. if you don't comply with our laws. And we'll give you this nasty name, and then we'll make sure that everybody knows this nasty name carries a label to it. And it differs with location based on the whim of the legislators, moral relativism. And it also changes with time based on the whim of legislators. That's all it is. Now, I've got some, people are like, oh, Florida Monkey, do you think it's a good idea that 60-year-old men and 16-year-old girls, blah, blah, blah. All that's of course what they call reductio ad absurdum. That is a logical fallacy, a cognitive bias that the 24 basic logical fallacies and 24 cognitive biases are the focus of the Florida Monkey Patreon channel. It's a mind game. It's psyops. People are tricking your mind into saying, well, maybe it is or maybe it's not a good idea, but since we can establish that God doesn't make mistakes, the highest drives for, reproductive activity, I guess is the way I'll refer to it. The highest drives occur in people this age. So either God really, really got it wrong, or maybe man screwed up somewhere in his thinking. Which one do you think it is? Show me down in the comment section. Did God mess up? Did God screw up? Should we say, God, boy, you're really goofed up. Women should only be having babies when they're 25, 6, and 7 years old. So why you gave them sex drive 10 years earlier, boy, you really messed up, God. Now, it gets even better. This is from East Palatka here in Florida. And there was a good Samaritan that tried to stop a fight at a high school. And he did. He succeeded in breaking up the fight. But the mob that had gathered to watch the fight wasn't happy with that. So this mob of 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, 13 to 17-year-olds, were all arrested and charged with inciting a riot and battery. They broke a guy's rib, full-grown adult. But wait a minute. According to man's laws, these are all just little innocent children. There must have been something the guy who got the hell beat out of him, must have been something he'd done to incite them. There must have been something that would make it his responsibility, since he was the adult that got the holy hell kicked out of him. And it didn't stop until administrators showed up. They were going to kick the guy to death. But I guess we can't charge them with anything. Gosh, they're just children. They can't be held responsible. Just like 15-year-old boo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo, poor Tracy Lords. The poor girl. She was so abused, and so she victimized millions of people at 15 years old by faking that ID and doing all that stuff on camera. The production companies didn't want 15-year-olds in their films. The other actors and actresses sure as hell didn't want 15-year-olds on their set. Did they? Everybody who bought the tapes, they weren't advertising the tapes as, hey, 15-year-old blah, blah, blah. They didn't think they were going to be watching 15-year-olds. But the 15-year-old victimized everyone else. And no one has ever said, why didn't she go to jail for this? See, if she couldn't go to jail for this, how can these teens over in East Palatka, Florida, how can they stand before a judge for their actions? It should be called the Tracy Lords defense. I'm a child. And not to put too fine of a point on it, here's a 15-year-old Mike Tyson. Fellas, if a 15-year-old Mike Tyson, you came home and he was in bed with your wife and they were having some happy fun time, unless you got a gun, brother, I suggest you just let the man finish, the young man finish, and let him leave. Because unless you got some type of a weapon, if you try to interrupt him, he's going to beat you to a pulp. Way back here in the early 80s. Don't think so? This is Lennox Lewis, many, many, many years later. One of the greatest heavyweight fighters out there. And he's, relates a story about when he got into the ring with a much, much, much younger Mike Tyson. He thought this guy was going to kill him. At 15. You're telling me this is a child? You're telling me this is a child. And if you sit there, well, there are exceptions, Monkey. No, there are not when it comes to girls. No, there are not when it comes to girls. Zero exceptions. of any kind whatsoever. There have even been judges that have regretted the sentences they have had to pass because the law doesn't allow for any exceptions, zero tolerance whatsoever when it comes to 15-year-old girls. But when it comes to 15-year-old young man, he hops out of bed with your wife and he beats you to death and you die, he's going to jail for a long time. Long time. Just like all of these kids over here in East Palatka, in this particular case, they're going to get some felony charges based on what happened over there. How can that be? Why is that fair? Do you see how it's screwy? Do you see how it's backward? Changes with time, differs with location, based on whims of legislators, complied with due to fear of punishment. That's man's law. That's how man does things, not God. I dare anyone to try to contradict me in the comment section. I dare you. When it comes to 15-year-old girls, regardless of what God says, in the current country we live in, there are zero exceptions. When it comes to that law, age of consent law, none whatsoever of any kind. Last I checked, a roll in the hay doesn't kill anyone. Nobody has to spend 3 months in the hospital in intensive care because of a roll in the hay or some happy fun time. But in this particular case, this guy came very, very close to losing his life. Broken ribs and all sorts of injuries. And it was 8 or 10 on one. I'm not going to play the video because it's going to demonetize the video. But you can look it up on Facebook. Putnam, Putnam, Putnam County Sheriff's Office, East Palatka Brawl. This was just posted not long ago. Tell me why, one, we can treat these kids like adults. Why in 19 of 50 states can we charge what they call underage people with prostitution? But when it comes to statutory rape laws, there are zero exceptions. Zero exceptions whatsoever of any kind. Even when we know that violates God's law. Can someone explain it to me? So, if you would like to tune into the Patreon channel very shortly here, we're going to have a brand new video put up called The Paradox of Choice. And how we can learn something from a PB&J sandwich about the paradox of choice and how it has paralyzed the youth of America. The youth of America are stuck because they have so many choices coming from so many directions that they have no idea how to deal with it. And it's causing all sorts of mental issues. And how maybe going back to a simpler time might be the answer. But some are going to cry, oh, wait a minute, you want to go back to this time or this era or that and this and the other? Well, isn't that what MAGA was all about? Make America great again? Doesn't that mean go back to the time when America was great at some point in the past? Makes for some interesting choices. I don't think a lot of people today would appreciate what going to the grocery store meant in, say, 1986. Because when you went to the grocery store in 1986, there were not very many choices of anything. And so many things exist now that didn't exist then. There was no such thing, for example, as an energy drink in 1986. I don't believe Red Bull came around until the 90s. There was something called Jolt Cola, which was just basically Coke with a bunch of caffeine in it. But it wasn't really an energy drink or B vitamin enhanced energy drinks. Didn't exist in 86. There were maybe help me out here, 4? Maybe 5 choices of bread, if you're lucky. And that was one of the, things that had the most options. You had your rye bread, and you had your wheat bread, and your white bread, bagels, hamburger buns, hot dog buns. That was about it. Little tiny section at the grocery store. No Walmarts. No Super Targets. Does that sound like life would be better? So, anyway, we'll get into this more over at the Patreon channel. But tell me again. Tell me again. What would you do? What would you do? Let me see if I have the picture here. If you decided, oh, yeah, here's this. You know, would you go after your wife for having happy go fun time reproductive activities with a 15-year-old if the 15-year-old looked like this and could beat the living hell out of you? And to a way that you might not walk again, you might not be able to feed yourself again. That's how mean, nasty, and ugly Mike Tyson was. He was knocking guys into the next county wearing boxing gloves. Can you imagine what he would do if he had his bare fists? And he could hit you when he was 15 years old? And you're going to seriously look at me in the eye and say, that's a child? If you can, you and I are on different planets. So I will leave it there. God bless. Pray for each other. Join us on Patreon. Pray for me. I pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.